room. I don't think we had this room last year for those that were here. This is impressive. In any event, for those that don't know me, my name is Mike Wood, Deputy Commissioner here at the DCJS Office of Public Safety. My role here is going to be very brief, and it's going to be one quick introduction. I'm not going to read anything. I'm just going to make a quick comment about it. Laurie knows this is coming, but when a couple days ago, I don't know, maybe a week ago, when I read the list, you know, Chuck Tyree did this big list, who's going to introduce everybody and all the different rooms and all the logistics with that. I looked at one of the assignments I had. You know, I work for Chuck. So he assigned me where I had to be and everything. So I looked at the list, and I saw I was introducing Laurie Owen from the National Network of Safe Communities. And I said, who the heck is Laurie Owen? I mean, we've been working with National Network for, you know, many years here, and I had no idea who it was, and that's my bad. But, you know, I knew her as Laurie Greco. She worked for us. The National Network stole her away a few years ago, and she's been recently married 3 weeks ago. So her name is Laurie Owen now. So congratulations to Laurie. So in that way, I guess that's a great introduction. But I would just say that as far as not only Laurie, but the National Network, you know, David Kennedy, Jeremy Travis, and the founding of it years and years ago and on downward, they've been, you know, probably one of the first, if not the first, national group that's really been heavily engaged with us at DCJS in pushing this work out across New York State. So it's just with that opening, and I'll turn it over to Laurie for the rest here.
Thank you so much. So the panel that we're going to have here is really about the emerging science of violence prevention. And the idea is that there's a lot of competing interests, it feels like, in cities that we work with a lot of the time. We tend to focus on models or systems, and sometimes it feels like that gets in the way of violence prevention because there can be many different approaches, and what works best is sort of a collaboration and kind of just putting together the best team. And so one of the things that we really wanted to kind of touch on was some of the approaches that kind of go outside the box a little bit. So, for example, I'm on the group violence intervention team, and we focus on the very small number of individuals that are responsible for driving the majority of the violence in a city. And regardless of what city that we work with, we see those same kind of patterns. It's a very small percentage of the population that is really driving the majority of the violence. And so we focus on the group, sometimes called gangs or crews, what have you, but we focus on that as our prime methodology. Even with doing that, even with having good information, a lot of times it takes some creativity to really be able to affect change in any city. And so these folks here are all really amazing at what they do, and it's really good for me because it makes me look a lot better at what I do. But I want to start, so right here is Assistant Chief Carl Jacobson from New Haven PD. He's been doing some really great work for a really long time, and as someone in law enforcement, he's probably one of the most creative individuals I've worked with when thinking about how law enforcement can approach violence in a city. Next to him, we have Jerome Brown, who is the program manager for Albany SNUG. So his focus is primarily on that street outreach component of violence reduction. And then we have John Delvalle, Senior Probation Officer, and he works very closely with Isabel Rojas, who's the program manager in Newburgh. And so without continuing to rattle on at you, I wanted to kind of have you guys start off. Isabel and John in particular, you guys have taken a really personal approach to reaching out to individuals, being creative in kind of bringing them to you or going to them. So I wanted you guys to just talk about kind of how you work together and just kind of how that's changed the approach to violence reduction in Newburgh.
Good afternoon. So what we've been really good at in Newburgh is collaboration, working together with our partners that are at the table, having open communication. When things are happening, we are in constant conversation. What we've done that works really well with John and I is that my office is directly downstairs from John's office. So sometimes John will call me and say, hey, I have someone who's coming in. Can you come up and talk to them, and go up there and have a conversation about the services and the things that are happening in Newburgh. So I think that the approach that we've taken is thinking outside of the box, right? Because in this work, we get so caught up with we have to do things a certain way sometimes. And yeah, it works sometimes, but in this kind of especially in helping when you're dealing with people, because this is a people business, right? So I think in thinking outside of the box, whether that takes you outside of your office more often times than you're used to, and also into areas and dealing with different situations. So you're wearing many hats in this role. So I'm going to let John talk a little bit about how we collaborate. I know everybody has a lot up here to say.
All right, good morning, everybody. So for me, I'm a unit of one. So I rely heavily on the partnerships. I don't have a normal size caseload in probation. I only get like the worst of the worst, like specific to the city of Newburgh. So for me, with that lesser caseload, I have that ability to have a little bit more time to kind of spend with them and figure out what their actual needs are. So now because of that, since I have that time, I can kind of devote those resources to exactly what's going to pinpoint reducing their opportunity to engage in more violence. So, I'll work with Isabel, say, hey, I have this guy coming in, he was ordered to pay restitution by the court. Problem is, his birth certificate has one name, Social Security card has another name. What do I do? All right, so we'll figure out where we need to go. All right, we got to go to Social Security, we got to get this done, we got to get his birth certificate reissued. So a lot of times what we end up doing is we'll collaborate on, where they need to go, so that if I'm normally with a normal caseload in probation, you're going to tell the person, all right, well, this is what you need to do. Go do it. Come back next time and we're going to talk about what you did. Instead, what me and Isabel will do is, all right, we come up with a game plan and then say, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're physically going to take this person by the hand and bring them to whatever that service provider is or agency, and sit down with them and make sure they understand what this process looks like. So, like I said, there'll be times where I'm not in the office, Isabel is around, and they have reached out to Isabel, my office, and she's come up and brought the applications, say, hey, well, this is what they can do. We may not be able to get them a new driver's license right here and now, but in the city of Newburgh, they have a municipal ID program. This is something we can offer them. Right? This is something they can work on now. So it gets them involved in the process in the here and now, as opposed to me telling them, all right, go do this, come back and see me in a week or two, and then we're going to talk about it. Because that's going to give them 2 weeks of them getting discouraged and not doing what they need to do, as opposed to saying, all right, time out, let's figure this out right now, and let's start this process now. The quicker we get them engaged in the services, the quicker we're going to have, or the better chance, the likelihood that we're going to have that they won't be engaged or continue to engage in the violence. All right, so basically what we do is it's a lot of, brainstorming, figuring out what we need, and then boots on the ground, let's go and do it.
Jerome, can you just talk about how you approach violence reduction work in Albany, and what it looks like for you to engage on the street?
How we approach violence reduction in Albany, it's a lot of different ways. We have a partnership with Albany Police Department where they give us names of individuals who may be known to be violent. We got the community who we work with who, it goes from mothers to uncles to whatever it may be. Different agencies who may tell us this guy is doing this or this guy is doing that. But the main thing is just the relationship that my workers have with the community, and knowing these people, knowing these individuals, knowing the local gangs, knowing the upcoming gangs, knowing the hot spots. It's a lot of different information, whether we get it from the police department or whether we get it from the community. But when we get this information, we meet, we have strategies that we do, and every week we have a weekly plan that we decide who we're going to target this week. When there's when I get a notification from the police department, my team mobilizes. Somebody might go to the scene. Somebody else might go to the hospital. We work with the social workers at the hospital. And even if it's a victim who doesn't want to talk to SNUG, because we run into that a lot also, we still work with the families. And then the families want to tell you different information, or, nobody wants their family members hurt. So it's a lot that we do, but we don't just stop at one place. We go on to the next thing.
So one of the things that we've talked about a lot in recent history is that law enforcement is strong medicine. We know that when we have to enforce, we're going out, we're taking people out of communities. We know that we can arrest our way out of violence, and we have not been able to do that historically. And so when we bring in and we think about law enforcement as part of a community-based approach to violence reduction, it's a different area for many in the law enforcement community. So, Carl, I know you started out as sort of a cynic with all of this. Can you just talk a little bit about, the creativity that you've used and how you kind of came to see this work in a different way?
Good morning. So we're going to just talk a little bit about where we were as a police department in New Haven, a small city of 130,000 people. From 2001 to 2011, we had 134 non-fatal shootings, averaged 134 non-fatal shootings a year and over 20 homicides. In 2011, we had 34 homicides and 162 non-fatal shootings. That's way too much for a city that size. So we had to do something else. In 2012, I was put as a sergeant in charge of Intel unit and told that we're going to do GVI and partnered up with people like Laurie and National Network and Safe Communities. And I'm a 22-year veteran of 2 police departments. I was like, we're going to tell people we're coming after them? I'm like, that doesn't make sense. We're not going to do that. That's not going to work. Well, I'm here to tell you it works. And how I got over the cynicism was I was told by a chief and a lieutenant at the time, do this. And I did it, and I did it, and I did it. And then I started to see the numbers. And I'm just going to tell you those numbers so you can see where I'm coming from. From 2012, when we started GVI practices till 2018, we averaged 63 non-fatal shootings. Averaged 63 non-fatal shootings from 134 to 63. It works, people. We also average under 10 homicides. In 2017, we had a 3-decade low of 6 homicides, and last year we had a 3-decade low of 50 shootings. It works. Traditional methods of policing were not working for us. We had to do something. We had to do something fast, and this is what we did, and it's worked. I didn't sign up to travel and tell these stories, but it kind of happens after such a drastic change like that. We've greatly reduced the violence in New Haven. So that's what got me over my cynicism. I was kind of just a good cop and kept doing what I was told to do. Now, I still have people that don't truly believe, but when they start to do the work and they go on a custom notification and they sit down with a kid and say, how we open our customs is we want you safe, alive, and out of jail. All right? And you see the reaction of the family and the person you're talking to. And I wish I had 1,000 stories that said these kids got jobs and changed their life, and I don't. But I do have a stat sheet that says we average 63 non-fatal shootings. So that's the story I have for you. Kind of untraditional methods. As we got started in 2012, 2013, the project manager changed. We had a lot of problems. We have a project manager now who's a retired homicide detective, but also an active community member, Stacy Spell. Stacy and I would still routinely go to houses and do the customs. Around 2014, we got a request from a grandmother to do a custom. And she said, my grandson's in trouble. He's doing things. I know he's doing things, and I want to meet with you guys. So we met with her in juvenile probation, and he didn't show up. But she talked to us for a while, and she kind of just put it all out on the table. She had a daughter that was driving around with gang members years ago, and someone turned to shoot out the window to shoot at someone else, and the gun went off and killed her daughter, shot her in the back of the head. So this woman's been through a lot. So kind of moved by the moment and our new method of policing, I said, well, if you find a gun in the house, You call me, I'll come and take it, no questions asked. And she's like, really? And I said, yeah. And she left. And then the probation officer said, you really going to do that? And I'm like, I kind of have to now. But I did say to her, we're going to test it ballistically, and if it comes back to a murder or shooting, then we're going to have a conversation. But we'll take it, and no questions asked, as long as it doesn't come back to something. So I thought this woman would never call me. Well, about 6 months later, she called me, and she said, there's a gun under the couch in the living room. I have 4 young men living here. Can you come get it? So another part of this work is when you say something, you got to do it. So at the time, I'm running plain clothes, threw on a hoodie, had a couple of my other regular detectives go out and act like they were canvassing because there was a shooting in the area just the day before. I went to the back door thinking that with gloves on, I was going to grab the gun from under the couch. Well, she goes, open the bag, and she's got the gun in her hand and throws it in my bag. Little orthodox, I don't try that, but that's how it worked. We tested the gun. It didn't come back to anything. We know whose it was because he immediately posted on social media, it just didn't grow legs and walk away, so we knew who we were dealing with. I wish I could end this story and say that the kid turned his life around and we got him a job, but he didn't. He shot someone probably a year later. And you know who helped me get that kid into custody safely without any issues and told me exactly where he was hiding? His grandmother. And that's what these practices are about for me, opening up relationships to the community and other people.
Thanks. So, Jerome, can you just talk a little bit about, you heard Carl talk about kind of his changing role. What has it meant to you to kind of work in the same space as law enforcement?
It's a different role, I tell you that. But at first, we had to get past a lot of the community and the community stigmatizing workers and SNUG workers as a police program. And, workers get upset, and as being part of management, you got to look for ways to help workers in the community understand what it is we do and the value that we here to provide. So I kind of coined the term that the police do investigations. Everybody know that. Police do investigations for prosecution, for arrests, whatever. But what SNUG do, we do research. So when we talking about, SNUG was founded on science. SNUG was founded on, detecting, interrupting, and changing the norm. So that's essentially what we do. We do research to try to find a cure for this incident. It don't matter what incident it is, if there's potential to be violent, if it potentially can lead to somebody being hurt, shot with injury, or just being deceased, we need to look into it. So we try to educate the public. We try to let them know, like, it's 2 different dynamics. And when it was, I know before when it was secure violence, as far as New York State SNUG go, it was a little hesitation to work with the police. But we know we need this data. We need the information that we get from the police. So it's a good partnership for us, per se.
Isabel, this is for you. I know that as the project manager, GIVE has more than one strategy that is implemented. What are the obstacles that kind of come up from having multiple strategies on the ground? And is it sometimes hard, or do people get caught up in the models more so than just kind of the overarching goal to reduce violence? Is that ever challenging?
So that's an interesting question. I think that it can happen. I'm not going to say it cannot happen. It can. However, because, again, it all comes down to communication. And I think what works well for us is that we're sitting down every Monday at a meeting where everybody's there from probation, parole, the police department, and myself. Then we have our monthly GIVE meetings. So I think the information sharing, it's helpful in not having those obstacles. And if you do have an obstacle, it's putting it all at the table. Are you always going to agree? Absolutely not. Are you going to have all the resources to get things going all the time? You won't. But if you have these conversations and you're able to say, okay, this is what we're doing and this is the outcome that I need. Sometimes those conversations mean that you may need the national network to sit at that table to come and do whether it's a refresher course, whether it's to have the conversation about why this is important to implement, you may have that. But I think with us, again, what I always bring it back to is having open communication and having those monthly meetings and weekly meetings where we are constantly communicating. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yep. So, Carl, around the idea of information sharing, I know that sometimes in the law enforcement community there's sometimes an ownership of information or a reluctance to share. How do you deal with that in your meetings that you have on a daily basis?
So yeah, that's another issue. I worked task forces my entire career before being promoted, and DEA had no clue what the FBI was doing, and ATF had no clue what the DEA was doing, and they would all step on each other's toes. That has stopped in New Haven. We have a daily intel meeting that they must attend if they want task force officers, and we had to get really kind of nasty in the beginning. And we had to tell all our plainclothes guys, which we have a lot, you will share information or you will put a uniform back on and probably be at the dog pound. And it's very hard. Policing is about, oh, I got this because I'm going to make the case. No, it's not like that in New Haven anymore. We put our information on the table. We work together. I've seen the FBI and the ATF sit down and do multiple wires together in our district. Never happened before. I've seen the FBI give informants to the ATF because if you're in law enforcement, you know the FBI and the ATF pretty much hate each other. We had to force these guys to do it. And in the beginning, when we started our intel meeting, not a lot of people were showing up. But when you become successful, so we solved a series of bank robberies and street robberies in our first 2 months of the intel meeting, then all of a sudden the FBI started showing up. And every day they'd be like, we have nothing, we have nothing. And I had to sit them down and be like, guys, it's information sharing. Tell us what you're doing. It's law enforcement, but it's information sharing. Yes, and probation and parole and even juvenile probation are in the room. And I had detectives go, oh, probation's here. We can't share information. They're law enforcement idiots, and you will share information. And that's how you have to be. Now, listen, this wasn't my theory. There was an old retired assistant chief named Archie Generoso who was old school, but he turned new school real fast after having to deal with 34 homicides, and he forced us to do it. And now I truly believe in it. And yes, do we run into certain situations where we may be doing other cases and step on each other's toes? We do, but we have such better relationships in New Haven because we meet 4 days a week at 10 o'clock at the police station. But it's something you have to pretty much force your people to do. Law enforcement in the room, no one wants to share their information. Well, as soon as you do, you can cut your shootings in less than half. Less than half. That's amazing, and it's because everybody in the room is working towards the same goal, violence reduction in the city of New Haven and saving lives. It's hard. I'm not going to say it's easy. We had to send people back to patrol, for real. We had to get in supervisors' faces. I, as a sergeant, had to fight with lieutenants, but that was the initiative, and we made it happen. And then from there, you also have to trust probation and parole. They're in our room with us, so we have to trust them. Then from there, you have to trust street outreach. One of our biggest positives in our GVI is the use of street outreach workers. Nobody wanted to trust the street outreach workers. Well, it was imperative that we trusted them. They can go and give messages in our city in places that we can't give messages. And it's a whole sum of the picture, from the project manager to the street outreach workers.
So, John, can you talk a little bit about the probation side of that? Because he kind of talked about law enforcement getting over their information sharing. What has it been like for you to kind of work both with the police department and then also on that support and outreach side of this?
So basically for us, historically, there's always been that divide. There wasn't much information being shared between probation and police, right? So once we started with GIVE, specifically with the GVI model, we were all forced to kind of put all the egos aside. Let's all sit down at the table. And as Carl said, we all have this one common goal. It's all about public safety. So with that, in sharing this information, we're learning more. So I attend these weekly meetings. We talk about a shooting. I go back to my office and say, hey, guys, look, there was a shooting. This is the area. as you're meeting with your people, kind of keep an ear out, see if anybody mentions anything about it. So now I have other officers in my office talking about the gun activity. They're kind of bringing it up when their people come in to report, and I now have new information that I can bring back to PD and say, hey, look, this is what we're hearing, this is what we're being told. Now, as far as intelligence goes, obviously it's not vetted, we're just going off of the word, what we're getting in the office, but at least it's giving them another avenue to kind of look at. So when it comes to services, it's, for me specifically, everybody that I supervise, they all get the same speech from me. I let them know from day one that I work very closely with the police department. I work very closely with the sheriff's office. And my goal, my job does not change because of that. I'm still here to help them change. So I will continue to work with them, but they know that if they're involved in something that they shouldn't be involved in, they're going to feel the wrath of it. They're going to feel that enforcement action. We're at a point right now where I can reach out to the police department. I can reach out to the sheriff's office and say, hey, look, this is what we're hearing. I need to go out and do a search. I need to go see what's going on with them. I need to see what's, are they really involved in this stuff or not? And it'll happen right then and there. But at the same time, if they say, hey, John, if I'm getting this from the police department or the sheriff's office telling me, hey, this is what we're hearing about this individual that's currently on probation. And, when we're not looking to jam them up, but we want them to kind of know that, hey, we're talking. We have this conversation. We know what's going on. So I got a call from the police department one day saying, hey, we got some drug activity where one of your probationers lives. I want you to come out here. We're not looking to do anything. We just want them to know that police knows, probation knows. And I grabbed one of the guys in my office and said, let's go. We just hung out. The second my probationer saw me, he went right inside. So he knew that, all right, now it's time for me to stop doing what I should be doing. And then obviously, yes, nothing happened that day, but I do follow up with them. Maybe they are going to now get an unannounced visit. Or we may kind of work with Isabel and say, all right, look, we need to kind of step it up a notch. He's still kind of holding on to all the stuff he shouldn't be holding on to. So what can we do next? So it's really, the partnership is very important.
Jerome, I know that we've kind of had some conversations around, being credible and, obviously when you're working on the street, being credible with those folks, but also being able to interface with law enforcement. How has that been challenging for you to be able to maintain credibility on both sides, and how have you kind of shaped your role in doing that?
Well, as far as the SNUG program, the program managers are the only one who actually deal with law enforcement. So that protects all of our outreach workers on the street, even, the outreach worker supervisor who's out there during 80% of their shift, they're out there in the street. So for me, it kind of insulates my workers and makes sure that the community is not looking at my workers in any type of negative form. And we teach our workers that if police come to you on the street, that if you're talking to an individual on the corner and the police come, SNUG has no superpowers. You are just a citizen out there with a SNUG jacket on, so you have to abide by any laws or any commands that the officer may say out there. And my workers, they know that, community, they sees that, and none of them has any type of negative effect. None of them have any type of negative effects on them. I go to monthly meetings with the police, and if somebody sees me, they don't necessarily look at me in no type of other way, because they know I'm the program manager, and this is just part of the partnership that we have. So I'm just here to make sure my workers can continue to have the credibility that they have out there in the street.
So the one thing that I think we should touch on is the enforcement piece. Regardless of how strong that street outreach portion is, we know that there is a time that there's going to be enforcement. How has, and this could be Carl or John, the fact that you've done a lot of affirmative outreach, how does that change the way you approach enforcement, or does it change how you approach enforcement when it's time to do that?
Yeah, it makes a big difference. Just like I told you the story about the grandmother, I got a lot of help from her to locate when we had a warrant for a shooting for her grandson. And just the relationships built in the community, because I'm coming to your house, knocking on your door, and telling you that I want your son, daughter, nephew to be safe, alive, and out of jail. That gives us legitimacy. We need that as law enforcement. I was in a session yesterday with another police department, and one of the guys said, well, we have to do this stuff because there's video cameras. No, we don't have to do this stuff because there's video cameras. We have to do this stuff because what we did in the past was wrong. Completely 100% wrong as law enforcement. We went to street corners after homicides and shut people down, and even the good people that were driving to work, we towed their cars because it was unregistered. That does not help, and that's what we did. Now we have to change that. So what we do now is we focus our attention on smaller groups. We focus our attention on that small population of people that are violent. And our community is starting to get it, like, these guys are legitimate. And just a story I was going to tell, and it kind of matches with this, is we had an officer, my plainclothes guys got involved in an officer-involved shooting in January. And, you know, they're known as the intel unit. They're known as people that work under me. We do all the customs. We work with the community more than arrest people. And after that happened, I had numerous calls from the community asking if I was all right, if my people were all right, especially one officer in particular, this kid Frank. And, you know, is Frankie all right? Is Frankie all right? I couldn't believe it. Not 4 months later, another police department got in an officer-involved shooting in our city, and there was close to riots and protests because the community did not believe in that other police department, but they believed in us. That's when this stuff really pays off for law enforcement in the room. When you have the attitude, and I had a Chief Generoso, again, stand up in community meetings and said, what we did to the African-American community was wrong. That's how it starts. Admit that you're wrong. Same with working with street outreach. I had to go to street outreach and say, hey, the other cops who didn't talk to you, they were wrong. I want to talk to you. I want to work together. Because we have the same goal in mind. You want to stop shootings? I want to stop shootings. I want to save lives. Why the hell weren't we working together 20 years ago? You know? So it's a tough sell to your people. I know that. I get that. But it takes tough leaders and people that just put the pedal to the metal and say, this is what we're going to do because it's the right thing to do.
So the only thing I'm going to add to that is, yes, partnerships are very important, right? But when we're out doing these custom notifications where, you know, if it's me and Isabel talking to a probationer in the office or we're going out to their home, you know, that family involvement is huge, right? So, yes, my guys know that if they've messed up and I'm out there doing a search, they've messed up, right? And typically I'll get you know, you remember me, you got me revoked, you know, whatever. Or they'll say, you know, it's because of you that I got in trouble. You know, now they understand that, yeah, all right, I failed John. You know, I didn't live up to what he was talking about, you know. And I'm also hearing it from family members as well, where typically we wouldn't get that buy-in from the family previously, where they would actually, you know, say, hey, pick up that phone and say, hey, this person isn't doing what they should be doing, or have you heard from this person? But now, because they're seeing that we are genuine, that we are looking to help them, even though I am, you know, alongside a City of Newark police officer or a deputy sheriff, you know, they know that, yes, we still have a job to do, but at the end of the day, we were there to try to help them.
So the second part of this would be for Jerome and Isabel. So that same thing, when there is an enforcement and it's happening in an area where you are working with people, does that change kind of how you're engaging with people after there's been a police action?
For us, no, it don't really change because we're always trying to be that comforting voice to the people. We're always trying to be that comforting voice to the community. We're always trying to tell them, you can withstand this. People that we go talk to a lot of times don't understand what's going on. But at the end of the day, we got to let them know that the officers are just doing their job. As far as SNUG, we try to stay away from things like police-involved shootings and things of that nature because we don't want to damage our partnership. But, you know, at the end of the day, if it's somebody, family member or something, we can't tell them that, you know, you can't do what you need to do for your family. But for us, we're always trying to just be that comforting voice and that voice of reason within the community.
So I'm going to add, like Jerome said, it's being that voice of reasoning, also reminding them. And that's something that we do. We always tell them, you know, we use the term safe, alive, and out of prison, right? We want you safe, alive, and out of prison. We tell the families, and a lot of times you would have the person that we're going to see that wants nothing to do with you. But mom, on the other hand, you know, you leave your business card. Mom is calling you either in secrecy and saying, please help me. They don't know anything. They don't want nothing to do with you. But once you start building that trust with mom, and even if they've gotten in trouble, I have gotten phone calls that they've said, listen, they got locked up. And I said, we try to help. You know, we did the best that we can. And they're like, you're absolutely right. So just explaining to them and saying, hey, the police department went there with me. You saw the lieutenant that was there with me. They were very transparent about what's happening. You know, we've told you what the DA's office is doing. We're very transparent. So there is no, I'm going to point fingers at this one, it's your fault. So we just try to have those conversations with them so they can understand, we did have this conversation with you, and now you have to own it, right? And a lot of times you're going to have people that are going to own it, and you're going to have some guys that are going to say, nah, I don't trust you. But then they'll call you, like I had someone the other day, I'm going to the coffee shop, and now I'm known as the social worker. So they go in my office, and they're like, oh, yeah, the social worker, the little lady that helps people. And I'm like, listen, whatever it takes, if I'm the social worker, the little lady that helps people, doesn't matter as long as we get you some help. So now I have people that are like, okay, I'm going to send my sibling, or I'm going to send this one. And you try to explain to them sometimes, well, are you in a group? Because we're working with groups. But then you also have to think sometimes, this is where we think outside of the box. This one, you know, you believed and we were credible enough for you to send a family member, whether they're in a group or not, I have to help them. So it's just that credibility goes a long way, even when you have those enforcement actions.
So I just have one more question, actually, just for each of you. So really, you know, our focus is around that kind of the emerging science and kind of the future of what violence prevention would look like. And I think we can kind of think about it two ways: how far we've come and the changes that we've made, and then where do you all think we need to go to be able to continue to reduce violence in cities that have done it? How do we sustain it? And in cities that are still working toward it, you know, how do we get where we want to go?
Well, real quickly, it's difficult. We have a new mayor coming in probably in November, and probably leads to maybe a new police chief. I've had 4 police chiefs in the last 7 years. What we did is we made GVI policy and procedure. You have to do this. This is part of what the police department does. It's part of our policy and procedure. But it's very difficult. Everybody comes in and has different ideas and wants to do different things. The only thing I can say is if you were able to stick with GVI, and for us it's call-ins, customs, working with our partners, intel meetings. If you're able to stick with it, you will have a set of facts that show you it works. It definitely works. So that is your backup for keeping this practice.
As far as the SNUG program, when we talk about science, you talk about looking at something and try to understand it and how to make it better. And from when I first got trained with SNUG 5-6 years ago, we just was out on the street. We was violence interrupters, just posted up on the corner, and hey, it's something popping over here, something popping over there. But in the years that SNUG been around, and all the trainings that DCJS have been providing, and all the new, when we first started, we were dealing with 20 individuals a month, and we had to see them 6 times a month. and DCS came in and said, you know what, them aren't quality visits that you're having with these guys. So they changed a lot of things within this time. We had people who we were seeing coming in from, well, we get trained and then you won't see nobody else again for another 6 months to a year. So now you're meeting with coordinators, you're meeting with trainers every month. And the best thing I say that's happening with DCJS right now, we're implementing the social worker piece. And now we're going to have a social worker and a caseworker at each site now when we talk about this work, everybody up here said it's like social work, right? But now we're going to have an actual social worker working there with us who's going to be able to take these individuals and better understand them than one of our workers can. Because you can send them to a five-day class for a week of training and tell them a little piece about social work, tell them about Erickson stages of development, or you tell them about Maslow's pyramid hierarchy, but they really don't have the complete understanding. So now what DCGS is implementing now is a great program where we're going to have people who really can understand the trauma and the things that these individuals are going through.
The other thing I would like to add is, it's with in-house, it's all about that buy-in. Right, so you gotta kind of get behind whatever that idea is, whatever the new program is. You just gotta buy into it, right? Give it a shot, see what happens. And then the next thing is really those partnerships. Developing those partnerships, whether it be law enforcement, service providers, and establishing that rapport, building that trust with each agency. With that, great things will come. Like we've seen a lot of success in the city of Newburgh, and it's really based on the partnerships that we have.
And I'm just going to add, I think institutionalizing the work, I think that it's important that as you're getting new administration, that you're having your refresher courses where you're bringing in the practitioners that help you implement the program. I think that that's really important because as our sergeant said yesterday when he did his presentation is we can't panic, right? So the numbers are going to go up and they're going to go down. And right now, in Newburgh, they're going a little bit up, so it's not panicking. When you have people that are going to just keep our heads down and keep working. I think that that's the major thing with all of this. It's just nothing changes. You're going to have your rough patches, and you're going to have the bad ones in law enforcement. So I think just institutionalizing it is crucial and just keep going at it.
We just have a few minutes left. I want to just open it up to some questions. There's a microphone back there. We can also pass this one around. Anyone?
So we have pretty crappy gun laws in Connecticut, but that's okay. Based through our intel meetings, where we literally meet ATFs there 4 days a week, we push every gun arrest is interviewed by our ATF agents, and every gun is traced and brought back to the situation where are these guns coming from, what's going on. They have like 4 or 5 open cases of gun trafficking that lead back to North Carolina, Georgia. So we are working that end, but it didn't start right away. We had to start these intel meetings 3 years ago and start figuring what are we going to do in these intel meetings. So ATF, what are you going to do for us? And that's the piece they bring to us.
Isabel, I know you all do some juvenile work with like youth police kind of engagement. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? And also I know that juveniles broadly are it's a tough group with the raise the age. And so we are doing some work, and I know a few cities that are really taking some initiative to do a version of group violence intervention with a younger population, less lever pulling and more kind of support around families, and that the jury's still out on that. It's a new kind of engagement, but as cities are struggling with a younger population and trying to intervene, that is something that we're working on. But Isabel?
So Newburgh has, back in 2011, NAFI brought in the youth police initiative into Newburgh. And what we did well was work with kids for 1 week where you have the police officers and the youth meet in one room, and what they're having is dialogue, you're doing role playing, you're building those relationships. Now, fast forward to 2019, the police department took on, I believe last year, their first summer program. Now the program is a cadet program. So now you're having these kids that are interested in law enforcement. What we seen at those things was a lot of kids we got from probation. Their parents didn't have a relationship with police, didn't want their kids involved. However, after those graduations and those meetings took place, they would come to the police officers and say, you know what, I see it in a different light, thank you. Now you're doing the work. Now the kids, you're getting them early in high school, and what they're doing well with them is they meet with them once a week, they do community service, they have them tour the police department. They're actually working one-on-one with these officers that are taking the time to get to know these kids in the community. And I think that that's helped out in a lot of ways because, again, Newburgh is small, so a lot of these relatives are either folks that have been in trouble in the past, so everything intertwines. So sometimes you have the kids that say, you know what, they see the police department in a whole different light. So I'm going to be honest and say that I think that that's working for us. You know, is it keeping down the shootings? Maybe not. However, it's opening up new dialogue for our community.
I had a question about the institutionalization side of things. In 5-10 years, you're going to have new young probation officers, you're going to have new officers. A lot of this is about kind of changing their mentality from old styles to new styles of policing or to probation. Can you give us some ideas on how this can be sustained, and even in the community, how this can be sustained over time?
So you just got to stick with it. I know that sounds crazy, but so just the same way it's so hard to change law enforcement's attitudes towards sharing information and working with probation, parole, in different avenues, once you make that change, hopefully it'll sustain, right? So all the new cops coming up in the police academy, we teach police legitimacy, procedural justice. We teach project longevity, which is our GVI model. We call it project longevity. The project manager comes into the academy and talks about this is what the city of New Haven does to reduce gun violence. Then we have numerous community events through Project Longevity. So Stacy will go out and have a barbecue. Stacy will go out and have a bake a cookie with a cop event, you know, which was really actually pretty cool. I didn't want to go, but I had a lot of cookies. But just, you have to keep pushing out what you have. You know, even when it wasn't working for us, and when we started, when we called people in, they were like, oh, those call-ins are because the people in the call-ins are all snitches. We're like, what? It's totally opposite of what it was. We had to push forward. We're hoping that now that that's how we do business, that it will just be learned by the younger cops. They won't know a different way, right? Same thing with police legitimacy and procedural justice. You know, if you know the community that you're policing, you know how to police them better, you know? And if you know that when I drive into a community and I'm a white cop in New Hallville, that's going to be a problem, then I'm not going to police them by, hey, don't move, don't do this, don't do that. Yes, I'm going to be safe, but there's a different way about it and a different way to do it. And that's what we're teaching our new cops, so it goes from there.
And just something that on our end from National Network, we work, and I don't know if anyone from Albany is in here, but we've just done a lot of work with them recently. One of the biggest things that we've tried to do with institutionalization is bring more people in. So, the idea is like if Carl's the only guy in New Haven who's doing it, or Isabel's the only one in Newburgh, when they go, it goes. And so really trying to make these operational groups, working groups, so having people at the executive level all the way down to the boots on the ground being engaged with this on a regular basis seems to help with long-term institutionalization, because then when one person leaves, there's already someone who is prepared to step in. And I know we're over, so if anyone does have any other questions, Carl's here all day.
One more time, thank our panel for this wonderful panel. Lunch is served, I think, or close. And we'll have a speaker during lunch as well, so we'll see you soon. Thank you. The panel will stick up here if you have any questions. Thanks.